Hi, everybody. This is Lowell with another thought regarding the subject of creativity. We're in a series dealing with the flow of creativity, particularly in music making. And I wanted to share with you today a little bit more specifically what that looks like in terms of musical composition and improvisation. But basically, bringing forth your own creativity, your own ideas. Um, and that's in the subject of motivic development, and that's kind of a fancy classical terminology to uh, say what can you take, what can you do to take the seed thought ideas and extrapolate them and develop them into longer structures. And I in previous videos I've talked about really a classic example, easy example to explain how this process works, from Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, where he takes those first four notes, ba, 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 and then extrapolates it into through motivic development into all these different other permutations of those same four notes through transposition and uh, but anyway, I wanted to share several points about how you do that. And I remember being in a road trip with my father, and we were talking about the subject. And a lot of times people will take a road trip like that and create games. I was just a young teenager, and a lot of times people on road trips create a game of I see this many telephone poles, or I see this color, just to keep, you know, just to have something to do. These days, everybody has their video games, I guess. But back then, we it was a long trip, and we just would make up games. And so he said, "Hey, why don't we make up a game of all these different ways that you can do motivic development?" And when he said that, I thought, well, that's not going to take very long. But the trip lasted probably 5 hours. And for the majority of that trip, we were playing this game, and we just never came to the end of the ways that you can develop a concept motivically. And so I wanted to share a few of them with you. Obviously, not all of them are possible to talk about here, but some of the most basic ones that are taught in music school, and particularly useful in what they call serialism, which I'm generally not a fan of serialism, because I believe that there should be always a tonal censor. And a lot of the serialist work of the past century was based on each note being its own tonal center, which to my ear, doesn't sound congruent. It sounds chaotic, and it doesn't seem to bring peace. And that's a whole nother subject of why there is a way of doing serialism that will not create that, where you can tie it to a tonal center, which I may talk about that later. But essentially, in serialism, you have four different iterations of a theme, and in basic serialism, you have 12 tones, and that's another terminology for it. 12-tone composition or atonal composition. Um, but the concepts of motivic development that are used in serialism came many years before, in works by Bach, and even before Bach, Palestrina and Monteverdi and various other composers. But Bach really synthesized the concept of motivic development, of taking a small group of a limited number of notes, which you can, in serialism, they used all 12 notes that are possible inside of an octave, but Bach would take these fragments and use them motivically in various ways. But the concept of these four things really show uh, pretty much the basics of motivic development, and that is what they call the prime. And so, for example, going back to the Beethoven Fifth Symphony opening, the prime would be those first four notes in that order. So bum 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 bum. But then you could play those notes backwards, and so that would be the retrograde. Bum, 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 bum. So that's doing it backwards. And then you can do it backwards, or then you can do it upside down, and that's called inversion. Bum, 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 bum. I don't know if I got the intervals right there, but anyway, so it's inverted upside down. In like the beginning of that is, bum, 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 right? So you have that intervallic pattern in those, three notes, and then you drop a major third. And then if you were to do it upside down, then you would do it bum, 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 you know, uh, intervallically upside down. And then you can do it backwards and upside down. And so that's called the retrograde inversion. So those four iterations of the seed concept, I think that pretty much summarizes the most basic type of motivic development that there is. And then there are other things that you can do, many other things. But for example, what if you took all four of those notes and stacked them up on top of each other to create a chord? Not necessarily the Beethoven example, but if you had, four separate notes, the Beethoven example only has two notes, but if you had four separate notes, could you stack those all up together and create a chord? Or could you take that chord and put it up an octave or down an octave? Or could you take those four notes and create a bass line with it? Or could you take those four notes and put it up into a really fast little pattern that is so fast that it sounds, you can't even hear the notes, that it creates just a percussive sound. I'd like to spend a little bit more time going through this, more ideas of motivic development for the next video, but that's kind of an introduction of how you would approach composing. And so you have your seed thought, and then you take that seed thought, whatever it is, and you work with it by creating these different permutations of it in your music. And that creates, so it's like, why do you do this? Well, there's something about the human brain that perceives patterns. And even though people can't tell that they're hearing patterns when they hear music that's created this way, their brain perceives patterns, and it has a sense of wholeness, a sense of congruity, instead of just a whole bunch of random thoughts that are strung together. And so it's a little bit like how DNA works. If you have a little strand of DNA from somebody, then inside of that one strand is, I've been told, I'm not a scientist, but I understand that inside of that strand of DNA is the pattern for the entire being, for the entire body, inside of that one strand of DNA that you get from somebody. And so that's it. I think it's a universal concept, a natural concept that is foundational to life and to creativity. And so I encourage you to think about some of these ideas, even if you didn't understand everything I'm talking about. Go do your own research and do your own study about these things. But it's a really foundational, basic principle of creativity and artistic development.